and Commissioner Dombrovskis with us also. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the press conference, virtual press conference following the video conference of economic ministers held today. Today with us we have Minister Maric and Executive Vice President Dombrovskis. So, Minister Maric, if you would start with your introductory remarks, please.
Thank you, Goranka. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Today, the members of the ECOFIN Council took stock of the progress achieved in the developing crisis instruments to tackle the coronavirus under a very tight schedule of just a few weeks. We also started looking at the recovery phase, how to restart our economies to ensure a robust recovery and a swift return to normality. In terms of the crisis instruments, following the mandate given to us by the leaders on 23rd of April, we worked hard to deliver by putting together an impressive overall envelope of 540 billion euro, aimed at developing 3 safety nets that will be able from June. 1 for workers, 1 for businesses, and 1 for countries. In order to support workers, I'm happy to announce that we have reached an agreement on the SURE regulation, which will provide up to 100 billion euro of loans under favorable terms to member states to finance their short-term work schemes and similar measures to help workers keep their jobs and incomes. By saving jobs and protecting the incomes of our citizens, EU governments will be able to minimize the negative social impact of the health crisis and allow our economies to leverage the reservoir of demand to bounce back to business as quickly as possible. As for business support, an overall political agreement has been achieved to provide the EIB with the guarantees to set up a pan-European guarantee fund, which is expected to mobilize up to 200 billion euro in fresh investments in risky activities with a special focus on SMEs. By keeping businesses open and running, while also fostering fresh investments, we will protect the European productive capacity and ensure that the temporary crisis will not result in a permanent loss of output. Turning to the support for EU member states, the ESM Board of Governors approved last Friday the Pandemic Crisis Support Instrument, which can be used by ESM members to finance health-related expenditures up to 2% of GDP, potentially mobilizing up to 240 billion euro. As for the forward-looking discussion on recovery, we all agree that close cooperation and coordination will make us stronger to face this crisis. We are looking forward to receiving a Commission proposal for a recovery fund, together with the MFF budget proposal, balancing old and new priorities. Of course, we are committed to work fast on this proposal and deliver results for our citizens as a matter of priority, keeping the strong momentum shown in the past weeks on dealing with this unprecedented crisis. Today, we also had a fruitful discussion on the communication on anti-money laundering published by the Commission. This is an important and wide-ranging discussion. It includes considerations on a single rule book for AML, as well as on the EU-level supervision, on which the Commission plans to propose legislation by early 2021. We also welcome the Commission's work in revising the methodology for listing high-risk third countries and look forward to its continued efforts in this area. The Commission's public consultation on the communication will now follow its course, and we will continue to reflect on the important choices ahead. And finally, the final item on the agenda was the implementation of 2019 country-specific recommendations and 2020 in-depth reviews as part of the 2020 European semester. We also adopted Council conclusions on these 2 topics. While the European semester is our standard framework for economic policy coordination, this year's exercise is very much not business as usual.
Thank you, Minister Maric. I hope that everything is fine with the connection to Commissioner Dombrovskis, and if that's okay, please, Commissioner Dombrovskis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Minister, dear colleagues. Let me start by welcoming that today EU member states have adopted our proposal to create a safety net for workers and companies with up to 100 billion euros, sure will support jobs and incomes of workers and self-employed during the crisis. Today we have also discussed a new pan-European guarantee fund to be set up by the European Investment Bank. The fund should provide up to 200 billion euros in financing for companies focusing on SMEs across Europe. Some issues are still to be worked out and we hope for quick agreement. These are part of our immediate crisis response measures together with European Stability Mechanism's pandemic crisis support, so altogether these measures are worth 540 billion euros. Clearly, Europe will need much more when we will shift to the recovery phase. Next week, we will present the European Union's recovery plan with the EU budget at its heart. We will include a strong and front-loaded recovery instrument funded through a larger headroom. In that context, I welcome the proposal made by Germany and France, which puts the multi-annual financial framework at center stage. It also reflects the sheer scale of the challenges that our economies face. As Minister already said, we had a first good discussion on our new action plan to tackle money laundering, which we put forward earlier this month. Protecting the stability and integrity of our financial system is vital. Our proposed 6-point action plan tackles all aspects of money laundering to create a comprehensive system that will stop criminals on their tracks. We have robust EU rules in place, but these must be applied consistently and efficiently, both in the public and private sector. We need to strengthen our rules, creating the single EU rulebook and tackle remaining weaknesses. We also need to update the way we screen non-EU countries with an updated methodology. We had a first discussion today on ways to boost supervision at the EU level. The string of scandals we have experienced in last years have highlighted that our rules are not being consistently applied by all national supervisors. This has to change. We have different options on the table. We may propose a new EU agency or add to the responsibilities of the European Banking Authority. This will also depend on the feedback of our public consultation. But as I have said before, if European Banking Authority is to become the EU supervisor, its governance and track record have to improve. And on European semester, today the Council adopted conclusions on the European semester 2020 country reports, including in-depth reviews and the implementation of the 2019 country-specific recommendations. These reports predate the crisis, but still they show that structural challenges and vulnerabilities will need to be addressed in order to recover. Tomorrow we'll present our spring European semester package, which has been tailored to provide member states with guidance on how to emerge from the crisis. We will need a coordinated and comprehensive response so that the Union can recover. We will also need reforms and high-quality investments to strengthen our economic resilience and to facilitate transition to sustainable, digitalized and carbon-neutral economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your introductory remarks. And now we will take a few questions. Please introduce yourself and the media you are representing. First, we have David Careta. David, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. David Carretta, Radio Radicale Italian Radio. Two questions, if I may. The first one, what are the open issues on the European Investment Bank? And are you confident that you can close the gap before the 1st of June? The second question is on the German-French proposal on the recovery fund. How in-depth was the discussion, and is there a consensus on grants as instrument to finance the recovery, or are there member states that prefer loans? Thank you. Minister
Maric, please, if you please.
Thank you, Mr. Caretta. We hold, and I need to say personally, I strongly believe that we will be able to finalize all these details in incoming days. So as you said, by the end of this month, beginning of June, there are a few more points among the member states, and after that EIB governing bodies, but in line with today's discussion, I strongly believe that we are very close in finalizing everything that is necessary for this pan-European guarantee scheme. As far as for a recovery fund is concerned, as Vice President just said, we can expect very soon a proposal of the Commission, and when we will have it, then we will be able to comment individually as a member states, and obviously to see a bit more of it. Of course, you know that we as a presidency, as an honest broker, we don't go into details. However, I can say that so far our comment as an individual member state was that our opinion would be that this should be based on the grant schemes.
Thank you. Commissioner, you want to add something?
Yeah, maybe just a few points. On European Investment Bank, indeed, I also think that we are close to agreement. It was agreed by the Eurogroup already some time ago that this EIB Pan-European Guarantee Fund should focus on small and medium enterprises. So in a sense, discussion is how strong this focus is going to be. And second is on potential losses which may arise from this Pan-European Guarantee Fund and how to tackle this. Well, on Franco-German proposal, as I said already during the introductory remarks, we welcome the contributions from member states, including this Franco-German proposal. It's what we see. It's positive that it puts multi-annual financial framework as a center for our economic recovery plan. It's commensurate with the scale of the challenges we are facing. So this proposal, as well as other contributions from member states, will feed now into Commission's proposal, which we are going to put on table next week, and where we, as we had announced before, will be reinforcing both grants and loans components in our recovery instrument.
Thank you. Next question. Jorge, please.
Good afternoon, Jorge Valero with Euractiv. It's a question also on the recovery fund. Yourself, Vice President, and President von der Leyen last week in the Parliament make a reference to the reforms, both for the digital agenda and the Green Pact. So my question is, how do you intend to ensure that the money of the recovery fund is dedicated to transform the economies, given the record of the European semester? Are you intending to present an amendment to improve the European semester, or a new monitoring mechanism? And also on the Franco-German proposal, and related to that, Merkel and Macron, the proposal made a reference to sound economic policy, member states following sound economic policy. So I don't know if you believe that member states should somehow commit to a sound fiscal policy in order to get the recovery funds.
Thank you. I presume that is a question for the Commissioner Dombrovskis.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. So first on the recovery instrument, which the Commission will propose. Indeed, one point we are emphasizing that we not only need additional money, additional investment for the recovery, but we also need reforms. We need to ensure a business environment which is conducive to investment. We need to strengthen administrative and technical capacity in actually ensuring that this investment is used to the maximum possible effect. So, as part of our recovery instrument, we intend to propose what we call Recovery and Resilience Facility, which will be concentrating on investments and structural reforms, in a sense building on the ideas developed in a context of budgetary instrument for competitiveness and convergence. And indeed, when we are now providing an economy with massive fiscal and also monetary stimulus, it's important that this stimulus is also aligned with our longer-term goals, with green and digital transitions. So, European Commission's proposal will clearly reflect this, that green and digital transitions will be integrated into our economic recovery plan. And at the same time, I would emphasize that also this economic recovery will need to be inclusive. So we should not be leaving anyone behind, is it people in our societies or regions or economically less developed countries. So we'll also focus on inclusive recovery. And indeed, this thinking is also being reflected in European semester. Because for European semester, which we'll present tomorrow, so today I will not go into details, but very much all these elements are reflected also in our guidance in European semester, where we concentrate on one hand on short-term crisis response, on another hand also on medium-term issues which are aligned with our goals of green and digital transitions, and where the approach of competitive sustainability, which we put forward in annual sustainable growth strategy published in December, remains valid.
Thank you. Now we have Susana.
Thank you. Susana Freixas, Expresso, Portugal. Vice President Dombrovskis, I'd like to ask you a more technical question. Since, actually the headroom and increasing the decision, the own resources decision up to 2%, is it enough to go to the markets and raise this 500 billion that was proposed by France and Germany? So I'd like to understand if this is enough. And taking into account that the Commission also, and you just said that you defend both loans and grants, do you somehow feel disencouraged by the fact that even yesterday countries like Austria, Denmark, Sweden just said that they don't accept grants, they only want loans? Actually, how do you expect to convince them? Thank you.
So on the first question, indeed, the way we intend to strengthen financing capacity of the next multi-annual financial framework and raise money for recovery instrument is linked with our intention to increase headroom in the EU budget. In a sense, we have already communicated that our ambition is actually not to increase the financing capacity in a range of hundreds of billions, but rather in a figure exceeding €1 trillion. Of course, in this case, we talk about both loans and grants. But in any case, that's the level of ambition we are discussing in a context of our recovery instrument proposal. Well, on positions reflected by member states, well, I cannot talk on behalf of member states. They can reflect better their positions, but I also think that there is a joint Franco-German initiative is also a positive sign, which will help us to build a consensus and eventually all member states agree that we are facing a major crisis and we need to react to this crisis in a spirit of European solidarity and in a coordinated way. So I am optimistic that at the end of the day we'll be able to find acceptable compromise.
Thank you. Now we go to Tanya Milewska.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, it's Tanya Milewska from the Macedonian news agency. I wanted to ask something about the dialogue you had this morning with the Western Balkan countries, and more specifically on North Macedonia. If I could have a comment, the government came up with a bunch of measures these past weeks, and some of them have been heavily criticized by the unions in North Macedonia. So I wanted to hear feedback from you and from the dialogue specifically on North Macedonia today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Your question was directed to the commissioner or the minister?
To both.
Thank you. Then Minister Maric, please.
Yeah, I can start. Well, thank you for your question. We had a very good dialogue this morning. It's a regular meeting, annual meeting with our partners in Western Balkans and Turkey. There was an exchange of views and measures that have been taken by individual countries, and obviously with perspective of going forward. I wouldn't at this stage not be able to comment any individual specificities of any of the countries and any of our partners in Western Balkans. Of course, as I said, the idea was to exchange views on what the governments have been undertaken so far and what is the perspective going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, as Minister said, I probably also would not go into specifics at this stage, but in any case, what I want to emphasize that European Union continues to engage closely with our neighborhood countries and is willing to support our neighborhood countries to overcome current crisis and provide support through different instruments, through emergency assistance, and also through omnibus macro-financial assistance programs, which are directed to 10 neighboring countries, including Northern Macedonia. We are currently in process of preparing memorandum of understanding with these countries. So we from European Union are of course aware of the challenges countries in our neighborhood face and are willing to provide necessary support.
Thank you. Now, Tobias, please. We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
No.
No?
We see you, but we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, sorry, this sounds a bit worse, but it's good you can hear me. Thank you for doing this, and it's very insightful. I have two questions to the Executive Vice President, Dombrovskis. One is concerning also the Franco-German proposal and the fact that both sides want to link the dispersal of the money to the European semester. My question would be, Do you have any plans to change the monitoring and enforcement mechanisms connected with the European semester? Because in the past, countries have always paid attention to the European semester and reform recommendations, but they have only more or less followed them depending on individual cases. And the other question is also more technical. Once there is an agreement on a recovery fund and a common European response to the economic fallout from the coronavirus, how quickly can those be put in motion? When could Europeans at the earliest expect money from the fund to flow, actually? Thank you.
Okay, so on the first question, indeed, that exactly was the idea of European Commission when preparing recovery and resilience facility, that we have a strong link between investments and reforms, as I was saying, building on the ideas which were developed in a context of budgetary instrument for competitiveness and convergence. And indeed, it's a link with a monitoring of implementation of these reforms through the European semester cycle. So I would say that the basic idea which we intend to put forward in resilience and recovery facility is going to be similar to the one which was there already for budgetary instruments for competitiveness and convergence, but we would apply it to all EU member states because current crisis is affecting all EU member states. We are facing symmetric economic shock. So that's on the first question, and in between I forget, sorry, second one was what?
The second one was when, considering this work on this goes forward and there's an agreement, let's say countries...
okay, yeah, when the money is coming, yeah. Indeed, yeah, thank you. Well, on this, by definition, next multi-annual financial framework starts as of 2021. So I would say that the bulk of this financing will be available as of 2021. And we are looking now in specific modalities to ensure that this money actually is reaching member states in 2021. Because if you look, for example, on multi-annual programs such as cohesion policy, if we would be doing business as usual, we would be spending 2021 in programming the funds instead of disbursing money to member states. And this is clearly not acceptable in current circumstances. Therefore, we'll come with some ad hoc solutions how we ensure that money is flowing to member states already on 2021. And we are looking for options and possibilities whether there is scope to front load some of this financing already for 2020. I would say it's technically and legally not overly straightforward, but we are looking what can be done in this regard. And there I would reiterate also the need to reach speedy agreement on our immediate crisis response measures, like, for example, European Investment Bank's Pan-European Guarantee Fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Julie, please.
Yes, hold on, the camera. Can you see me?
No, but we can hear. Now we can see.
Okay. Oh, sorry for the light. Okay. So, yes, my question is to both of you. Billions of euros will be deployed by the Commission and other EU institutions. So how can we be sure that public money is deployed whilst following strict AML rules like the private sector does? Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dombrovskis, would you like to go first? Thank you.
I'm not sure I correctly understood the question because in a sense where we are discussing public money, which is in this case raised by public institutions. In this case, we propose, for example, it's EU institutions, and deployed through the EU budget. I would say the primarily concern in this case is not anti-money laundering, because it's done by the public institutions, and there shouldn't be any scope for that kind of activities. And the origin of the money is very clear. Either raised through contributions from member states or through accessing public markets, as is the intention in case of recovery instrument. So rather the question here is on sound budgetary management and ensuring that those resources are spent in a sound and effective way. And from that point of view, the very fact that the money will be channeled through the EU budget with well-established practice of budgetary control, of oversight by both co-legislators, by member states, by European Parliament, of discharges of the budget, of work of the Budgetary Control Committee in European Parliament and European Court of Auditors. So there is already well-functioning system to ensure effective and effective use of EU resources in line with the allocated aims.
Thank you, Minister Maric. You have something to add?
Well, just maybe briefly from the country's perspective, we on individual level of individual countries, but also on pan-national at the level of European Union, there are institutions which are responsible at the end of the day for the effective and efficient use of public money. And on the one hand, of course, you need to have certain criteria. In these current circumstances, I think that on the individual level of member states, I can tell you I can witness you from the Croatia's point of view, the idea was to put these measures to be as fast and as efficient as possible, but at the same time, of course, you can't neglect corrective arms and obviously to send a right signal that the idea is to use public money in efficient way for the purposes which are planned to serve, and as you pointed out correctly, Julie, and that is at the end of the day to serve its purpose for the economy and to have a positive effect back to the public finances as well.
Thank you, Minister. Just to clarify for Commissioner, it's not about where the money is raised, but where it lands rather and how it's spent.
But that's exactly was my answer, that's why we have all the budgetary management tools of our disposal, and the system of monitoring of EU budget expenses is well established and functional for many years, if not decades.
Thank you. Now we go to Jack. Jack, please.
Thank you. I have a question about money laundering as well, but the money laundering package. The last time a proposal on high-risk third countries was presented to the Council, EU member states rejected it almost unanimously. I wondered if there was any signal that this list is more favourable to them, or will they do the same thing again and reject the proposals?
Well, first of all, we had listened what both co-legislators had to tell European Commission following the presentation of the previous lists, and there were basically two main elements. One is closer alignment with a financial action task force list, which was probably message primarily coming from member states, and as a safeguarding of autonomous EU assessment of high-risk third countries, which was more the message coming from the European Parliament. So we have taken on these messages on board. So what we are now proposing as a methodology and correspondingly as an updated list, it's aligned much closer with a financial action task force, but at the same time it preserves EU's autonomy in this decision making. So we expect that this list is going to be approved by member states. In any case, today's discussion didn't indicate any immediate objections to that.
Thank you. And now we'll go to the last question. Angela, please.
We can't hear you, Angela, again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. One is about the recovery fund, if it is realistic to think to reach an agreement by June in the European Council in June. And the next one is about what Christine Lagarde said today in an interview. She says that the Growth and Stability Pact has to be revised before it's reactivated after the emergency. And I was wondering if you can comment on this. Thank you.
Well, I think the first question is probably primarily for the Minister, because that's indeed a question to Croatian presidency, how optimistic they are about reaching agreement on the next multi-annual financial framework and recovery instrument already in June. In any case, Commission will put forward our proposal on 27th of May, and we stand ready to facilitate the agreement between member states, but also with the European Parliament. In any case, we know that time is short, so we need to agree fast. Whether it's exactly June, I leave this to comment to Croatian presidency. Then on Stability and Growth Pact, as you know, there is already a work stream in European Commission where we are assessing the effectiveness of the Stability and Growth Pact and its implementation, and this work stream is still on, so to say. But in any case, what is important to build a consensus around where we want to go with potentially new rules or adjustments to the Stability and Growth Pact, not to be caught in some kind of divisive debate. And another point which is clear, as long as there are no new rules, old rules apply. Currently we have a general escape clause, but also in a general escape clause, it's clear that member states should keep medium-term fiscal sustainability in mind, into account, when devising additional spending. And once we return to the normal functioning of the Stability and Growth Pact, of course we'll have to accept that we will start from a different starting point with higher budget deficit and debt levels. Thank you.
And if I may just add on the top of what Commissioner said on the first question, of course, I think that Croatian presidency, despite the fact that this is for the first time for us to lead the presidency, already proved that we can be very fast and efficient. And since this outbreak started, we said that we will always be stand ready to whenever certain political or any other agreement was being reached, that we can proceed to the next phases. As we just heard, very soon in the terms of next days, when we will see and we will have proposal on the recovery fund, we will activate all our means and of course communication at the level of different working groups and working parties in order to proceed and progress as fast as possible. We would be more than happy. Two main reasons why we would be more than happy to have agreement in the course of June, in the second half of June, when our leaders will have again their meeting. On one hand, because it's going to be the end of our presidency, but on the other hand, of course, rather sooner than later, this fund and this whole program should be activated. But of course, I would always emphasize that it's also very important and critical to have, I would say, good and qualitative proposal. And at the end of the day, we can expect compromise reached at the level of European Union.
Thank you, Minister Maric. Thank you, Executive Vice President Dombrovskis. That will be all for today. And thank all of you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.